Hello, my chickadees. This is your digital teacher, and today we're going to be learning about adverbs. First and foremost, everybody should have their notebooks out. Have you gotten your notebook out? You should be grabbing that. All right, once you've got that out, today we're going to talk about adverbs. But before we spend too much time talking about adverbs, I want you guys to remember what adjectives do. So, first of all, adjectives modify or describe nouns or pronouns only. They answer the questions which one, what kind, how much, or how many, as you remember from our song, How Many? So, if adjectives only modify nouns or pronouns, we can assume that adverbs are going to modify something else. And we would be correct. An adverb is a word that modifies or describes a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. So it's going to modify or describe a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. It is going to answer the questions when, where, how, or to what extent, which includes how much, how long, or how often. It's going to answer these questions just like adjectives do. Also, a handy trick for adverbs is many of them end in ly. So, if you're stuck on a question and you're not sure, look for some lys and see if perhaps that isn't your adverb. So, for example, we can do what we did last time. The students groaned loudly at the start of a grammar lecture. How did they groan? They groaned loudly. John often wonders why he was born with no hands. How often does he wonder? Often. The remote control slipped between the cushions. Where would you look for the remote control? In between the cushions, right? Many students barely listened during the adverb examples. To what extent or how much did they listen? Well, they barely listened. Let's take a look at a few more examples here. Remember, adverbs can only modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. So, adverbs obviously modify verbs, so check near your verb. In this case, our verb is chirping. So, the bird was chirping outside. Where was it chirping? Outside. The bird chirped today. When did it chirp? It chirped today. The bird chirped loudly. How or in what manner did it chirp? It chirped very loudly. The bird never chirped. To what extent did the bird chirp? Well, it never did. So notice that the verb is being modified by the adverb. It's adding a little emphasis or changing how we read the verb. Otherwise, each of these sentences would just be saying the bird chirped, the bird chirped, the bird chirped, or was chirping. It wouldn't tell us anything else about the ways in which the bird is chirping. All right, guys, you have until the end of this very silly song to take a stab at finding the single adverb in each of these sentences. All right, guys, so you've had a few minutes to think about this. Now, as we've said before, it's always a good idea to go through and find your verb and your subject first. So, number 1, birds, bats, and bugs fly effortlessly. Fly is our verb. Bugs, bats, and birds are our compound subject. How do they fly? They fly effortlessly. Also, notice there's that little ly that we were looking for. So this is our adverb. Number 2, in their experiments, they initially produced hot smoke by burning straw and wool. If you're faced with a sentence like this, it's not a terrible idea to go ahead and take out your prepositional phrases. So for instance, in their experiments, that's a prepositional phrase, so we can ignore that for now. By burning straw and wool is also a prepositional phrase. So what we're left with is they initially produced hot smoke. So they produced. Produced is our verb. Our subject is the pronoun they, and they produced smoke. Smoke is a noun. Hot is modifying smoke, so hot is actually an adjective, right? So we can ignore that.
What's left is initially. It has that ly, which is handy. But also we should ask ourselves, is it answering any of our questions? And in this case, it is. It's saying, when did they produce hot smoke? Well, at the start, they produced hot smoke. So this is our adverb. Number 3, we will be leaving for the movie soon. Again, take out your prepositional phrase. For the movie is a prepositional phrase. Remember, prepositional phrases end at the noun, so we can ignore that. Will be leaving is our complete verb phrase. We is our subject. When will we be leaving? We're going to leave soon, all those soons all the way at the other end of the sentence. So this is our adverb. Notice it does not have an ly. It just has a soon, but it's still answering those questions. Number 4, everyone thought deeply about the grammar lesson. I wish. In the meantime, about the grammar lesson is a prepositional phrase, so we can take that out. So everyone thought deeply. Thought is our verb. They're thinking about something, right? Everyone is our pronoun saying who was thinking. And to what extent were they thinking? They were thinking deeply. So it does have our little ly here. It's modifying the verb thought. Therefore, it is an adverb. How'd you guys do? I hope you did well. Here's a smiley face because I know you did. And let's move on to our next set.
Adverbs also modify adjectives. So what it's going to do is add a little bit of emphasis to the adjective that's already there. Our pro tip for figuring out whether it's modifying an adjective or the noun is to read backward from the noun. And the easiest way to do that is to find your verb, your subject, and then your object. So, it was a competitive game. It was a game. So, game is our noun, right? It was a competitive game. So, competitive is modifying game. So, competitive is an adjective. How competitive was it? It was fiercely competitive. So, fiercely, which ends in ly, is modifying the adjective competitive in that sentence. Take a look at the next one. The exceptionally brave police officer was given an award. So, the police officer was given an award. We're going to say police officer is a compound noun. What kind of police officer is it? It's a brave police officer. How brave? Exceptionally brave. It just adds a little emphasis onto the adjective. All right, here's your next task. Find the adverbs that are modifying adjectives in each of these sentences. You have until the end of this song.
All right, so you guys have had a few minutes to take a look at these and give them a stab. Again, we're looking for adverbs modifying adjectives. And once again, we're going to go in and look for our subjects and our verbs. So number 1, an extremely large grizzly bear devoured the Smurf population. Devoured is our verb. It means to eat, in case you didn't know. Our subject is grizzly bear. I'm going to say that's a compound noun. And population is what was devoured, with Smurf modifying population. So Smurf is an adjective. Now let's look at our grizzly bear. The grizzly bear is large, right? So large is an adjective. We're going to ignore this. It's an article, so we know it's an adjective. How large was the grizzly bear? It was extremely large. So extremely is modifying the adjective, which means this is an adverb. Also, notice we've got our happy little ly right there. Question 2. She could not believe the incredibly long grammar lecture was only about adverbs. Mrs. Hood could believe that, actually. So, first of all, we're going to take out our prepositional phrase here. We're going to ignore that. And we are going to look for our verbs. So, could, believe, and was. So we've got a complex sentence here. She is our subject for that one. She could believe. Lecture is our object. To what extent could she believe? She could not believe. So not is an adverb. It's a lecture. It's a grammar lecture. So that's an adjective. It's a long lecture. So that's an adjective. But how long is it? Incredibly long. There's an ly. It's modifying an adjective. So this is an adverb. Last, number 3. He was an oddly dressed fellow with a terribly nasty boil on his right eyelid. Once again, we are going to take out our prepositional phrase. And then we're going to find our verbs. So he was. He was what? He was a fellow. That means he's a guy, right? What kind of fellow was he? He was dressed. To what extent was he dressed? He was oddly dressed. So if dressed is our adjective, modifying our noun, which is over here, then oddly is modifying our adjective, which makes oddly, which oddly has an ly on it, an adverb. Now, we also have to look here. With a terribly nasty boil. Normally we would just ignore this, right? But I think we can see that this is probably indicating there's something going on here. So it's with a boil, as this is the object of a preposition. That means this is a noun. What kind of boil is it? It's a nasty boil. So this is an adjective. How nasty was that boil? Terribly nasty. So this is actually modifying the adjective, this right here. It's got our ly, so this is an adverb. I guess the moral of the story is check the whole sentence even if we're taking out prepositional phrases. Good job, guys.
Adverbs also modify other adverbs, so that's confusing. Again, here are a couple of examples. Once again, we should always identify our verb and our subject, and if there's an object, not a bad idea to identify that too. For instance, the guide spoke extremely slowly. Our verb in this one is spoke. Who's speaking? The guide is speaking. How are they speaking? Slowly. So that's our adverb modifying the verb. It's telling us how was he speaking? He was speaking slowly. How slowly was he speaking, or to what extent was he speaking slowly? Extremely slowly. Same thing for the next one. We will go to the mall later today. Go is our verb, will go is our complete verb, we is who is going. We're going today, so that tells us when. When today? Later today. She checked very thoroughly. What did she check? She checked thoroughly. How thoroughly? Very thoroughly. One final note before I let you guys go do your homework is, just like nouns can act like everything else, sometimes nouns act as adverbs. One way to figure out whether or not it's acting as an adverb is to check to see how it's acting in the sentence. Remember, only nouns and pronouns can act as the direct objects of an action verb, the predicate nominative of a linking verb, or the subject of a sentence. So if it's acting as the subject or as the object, or if it's part of a prepositional phrase, well then it's acting as a noun. So for instance, on our first side here, our home is in Lancaster. Is our verb, in Lancaster is a prepositional phrase, so we're not too worried about that. What's in Lancaster? Home. Home is the thing that is in Lancaster. It's also the subject of the sentence. As opposed to, let's go home. Where are we going? We're going to go home. So in that case, home is acting as an adverb. This one's pretty tricky, so we'll probably spend some more time on it whenever we get back together next week.